StoryHinge, Episode 88. Jake Starkey, helping businesses tell their story.
It's just like anything, you have that kind of outside opinion. You can be a little bit more honest and truthful with your emotions. And that's, I don't know where that falls in a job description box necessarily, but I know that that's where I really feel like I do my best work, is when I can kind of break down those barriers for someone and have them just fall in love with their company again, fall in love with what they're doing, and just kind of help them focus it too.
Welcome to StoryHinge. At StoryHinge, we explore foundational ideas and beliefs. We believe everyone has a beautiful story to grow. Now here's your host, Jason Vidaurri.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to StoryHinge. I am your host, as said, Jason Vidaurri, and today we have on Jake Starkey. Jake is the creative director for Battle Cry Revival, which is a marketing company here local in the Houston area. Local, at least for me. And Jake uses his 15 years of experience in marketing, design, and video production to help his clients essentially clarify and tell their story. So with that, Jake Starkey, welcome to StoryHinge.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Jake, you know, as a fellow Houstonian, or at least close to Houston at least, it's nice to talk to someone local. And I guess maybe just with you, I just want to jump in and hear what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then maybe backtrack and hear some of your journey on how you got to where you're at today.
Sure. So my wife and I own a company called Battle Cry Revival, which a lot of people mistake as a church. And it's not a church. It's just a marketing company in the area. And we call ourselves a one-stop shop. We do everything from one-off business cards to branding for companies to try and meet the entrepreneur, small and medium-sized business owners where they're at, when whatever that might be, if they need help. Again, with something very small, great. If they need kind of the whole branding package, we can help with that. So that's kind of that's where we're at now. We're looking to do a few things in the future that are kind of giant leaps for us, but it's exciting.
Okay. Why'd you get into this? I mean, that sounds broad in some ways. And
yeah. So I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always wanted to have my own business. And I was working for the Alvin Manville Area Chamber of Commerce and had an old friend, so to speak, approach me about doing some work for him, but he needed me kind of on site with him a couple of days a week. And I kind of talked with my wife, and it was one of those things where I'm kind of getting a running start at this. I'm not kind of going into it blind, and it's a perfect opportunity to try and do this thing that I've wanted to do my whole life, which is have my own company and kind of have a little bit of a runway, so that way I can work for him and kind of have that somewhat steady income to kind of make that leap. And so we kind of just dove headfirst, and it's been a crazy trip. I've gone to Vegas with them. I've gone to Florida and kind of helped out with different marketing things. And it's been a real fun experience working with them. And then obviously launching our own business. So
the work with him is similar to what you do now, or is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I handle marketing for him. We email marketing, and then just kind of, whether it's public relations, which is something I started out doing, almost 20 years ago for municipal government. It's just a little bit of, I play a little bit of the catch-all. You know, he's got a good team there, and they're doing a lot of great work, but there's just too much to kind of do. And so I try and fill those gaps for him where I can. Okay.
And so what is the appeal about it for you, that when you say, yeah, I really enjoy this, or when you dig deep into that, what is that seems to bring you that?
I like learning. So something you hear actors talk about a lot is how they love to act in different movies because they learn a little bit. Like if they play someone from the military, they get to learn military, or a lawyer, they learn all this. And that is something that I enjoy with our clients, is I get to learn a little bit about their industry. And then they get to, the thing is ultimately to tell their story to the world. But the best part to me is when I sit down with them in a room and shut the door, and they kind of, like, I'm almost like a therapist for them, and we just talk, and they kind of get their story and what they are trying to do out. That moment to me is amazing, because then I can turn around and go, okay, now let's tell the world. and you can kind of see their eyes light up like, yes, let's go, let's do this. And so I really love it.
So when you approach that, yeah, you hit in a place where I guess that's, if there's an element in my, journey here with StoryHinge is to understand what is a good story and how to get better stories out in the world. And you're tapping right into basically doing that process for people, for businesses. As you approach that, what are you looking for? What are you trying to do? How do you flesh that story out and then give it to the world?
Sure. So it's a lot of talking. And when I say therapist, I'm realizing it is a little bit like a business therapist, because there's people and they have these dreams of where they want to be and they don't know how to get there. They know where they are, they know where they've been, and they know where they'd like to be 5 or 6 steps down the road, but they don't know how to go from where they're at today to where they want to get. And a lot of it's talking, and they kind of they explain themselves where they made mistakes or where they wish they would have done something different. And I just kind of ask questions, and it's them telling me stories, and then I just turn around and go, and how does that make you feel? Or almost like a therapist,
like kind of
getting them to, they're discovering it themselves, and I just get to be in the room with them, and that's really neat to me. And I'm wearing headphones, but I always like to joke that I have big ears, and it makes it easy for hearing people. And I that's my favorite part, is sitting down and talking to someone about their company and what they're trying to accomplish.
Do you have a specific story, like when you got to go do this with somebody, and then it really was one of those times when it revealed a really cool story that you're like, that story was in you, it was there, you just haven't used it yet?
Yeah. So we got my client, it's a Love Handle. They make phone grips, and they're in Rocheron. And we got a call to be on a podcast with a friend of ours through Get Associated. It's with Vinyl Draft Radio. And so Mike Watts is the owner of Love Handle. We got to go, and it was fun because he got to tell his story. And then as he was being interviewed, I kind of tried to interject the things that I'd already heard. And then he was able to expand on it, not just in the room, just the two of us talking, but in the room with being interviewed on broadcast. And it was awesome to kind of hear him recount those stories. It's almost like when you give a speech, you always give it a couple of times. You kind of practice it. And he was able to practice it with me, just talking back and forth. And then he gets, on the radio, and he's able to tell that story with the passion that he had. And it was just fascinating to watch, because it was like he was saying the things I'd heard before, but no one else had. And it was just really cool to kind of sit back and go, okay, hopefully, if I've done my job, I've helped him craft his own story to himself so that he can then tell the rest of the world. And that was it's not a specific thing that was said necessarily. It was just fun to sit there and hear him, again, just tell his story, his version of what's happened in his life and how it came to pass and how he got to where he was. And knowing that I'd kind of had those conversations with him before, it's just it's hard to kind of put into words.
Yeah. Are these usually like foundational stories, like how they got to where they're at, like why they created their company type stories? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
So the company's called Love Handle, and it's a phone grip, and it's a funny name. And we always like to go, like I've traveled with them to conferences, and we'll talk about, it's the only love handle that you're going to want. People walk by and they'll stare at it and they'll look up and go, oh, you want to know more. And then the story behind how the name came up and how it really kind of came from his daughter. He kind of joked about it with her, and she liked it. And then, he's the kind of guy that he takes input from everyone and kind of tries to absorb it all, which is great. He's constantly learning. And that's something that, again, I'm kind of on the periphery for, but I also kind of enjoy, because it's fun to watch, just watch it happen at the same, like in real time.
So as you're observing that and seeing that transformation, are there certain elements that you say that part makes it a good story? That's coming through, and that you can feel that resonate as he's delivering that message or creating that story.
Sure. I always kind of think of the hero's journey, and so for them, they were able to. He's a second generation entrepreneur. His son is going to going to be a third generation entrepreneur, and hearing, so the way I know him is that years ago he had a weed eater head, and he hired me to do a video for him. And then so that was like 2006 or so. Cut to 2014, he contacted me again to do another video. Cut to 2018, and we were sitting there talking, and he's asking me to help out more. And so knowing his story of taking that pivot trim head, which is, it's a weed eater head, right? Like there's not much, you wouldn't think that there's much of a story to tell, but knowing how he traveled and sold it at all these shows, and then the video helped to get to Walmart, got it into Walmart and helped to get the thing sold. And, then he was able to, what's the business term? Exit. He was able to exit the company. He basically sold the pivot trim head to other people, and just being able to be on the periphery of that. And again, it's not my story, but it's a great story. And then seeing him now with this phone grip, and we talk a lot about the roller coaster, that idea of like tick, 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 and then eventually and you're off. And we talk about how it feels like we're right there, and we're about to take off. And so again, having those kind of three separate experiences with them, this being the third, it's just, again, not necessarily a specific moment, but just those little things, like I look back and go, man, that's amazing to me how little moments had worked out, and that we're here where we're at now.
Okay. And as you're interacting with another company, like another person, how you're bringing that story, I guess, what is your role in exactly? You're creating videos for them? Are you? And I know you said earlier you do, depending what they want. There's a pretty wide range of what you do.
Well, and that's the thing, is that it started out with doing a lot of video, and so we recorded demos, and then we went to a couple of conferences and kind of shot different things. And so, for instance, we went to Vegas and we worked the conference all day, helping people use the phone grip and putting it on their phones and everything. And then we'd finish, change clothes, we'd go out, and we'd be out until like midnight on the Vegas Strip recording people and just handing it out. So it started out with kind of straight video, and then it's kind of morphed into being able to sit down and the consultant side of it, where it's just a lot of him discussing where he wants to go with the company, and then kind of having me as a backboard to bounce ideas off of and go, okay, well, if it's this, and what about that? Or, okay, well, that sounds good. And then it's just like anything, you have that kind of outside opinion. You can be a little bit more honest and truthful with your emotions. And that's, I don't know where that falls in a job description box necessarily, but I know that that's where I really feel like I do my best work, is when I can kind of break down those barriers for someone and have them just fall in love with their company again, fall in love with what they're doing, and just kind of help them focus it too,
And as you're going through that process, what are some of the challenges you seem to face? Is it them opening up and getting to that level? Is it them even trying to understand the story? What kind of challenges do you face when you're doing that?
Yeah, it's the interesting thing is that most of the time, a lot of clients think that you show up and it just magically happens and you're done. And you just show up and you're creative, or you show up and marketing works, or businesses get better. And it is a process, and it's I think I've heard it described like ironing. Like you iron a little bit, you go a little bit further, but you go over what you already went over. You go a little bit further, and that's kind of what I do. And it's just a lot of repetitive breaking down of what people say, and kind of trying to get behind what they're actually saying. What do they really mean when they say something? Because sometimes, you show up and it's just 90 miles an hour. It's a small business. There's people going nonstop all day, and I'll sit with them, and they'll come walking in with questions, and I get to be that voice in the room to say, no, yeah, there's a lot of people coming in today. A lot of people are asking questions, and then we just talk, and I don't know. Again, being a backboard for someone is fascinating to me.
Okay. No, that's really good. And you brought up the hero's journey, and I think my audience is somewhat familiar with that. We've talked a little bit about it in some of the episodes, but why don't you break that down for us a little bit and help us understand? You say, hey, if you can show the story through the hero's journey, that seems to be a powerful way to do it.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because in knowing the hero's journey, I actually know it through Star Wars, so I relate everything to like
that's good.
the Chewbacca or the Han Solo, or if Luke is a business owner, in a perfect world, I could hopefully be Obi-Wan to someone, like, and offer the advice, but they're also the one that's doing the work. They understand what they need to do. They understand what it's going to take to move the needle for their business, and just hopefully I don't get cut in half by a lightsaber.
Or disappear into the forest or whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly. Whether or not he actually died.
No, but that's real good, because I've actually and that's one of the common places the hero's journey has been put up from Joseph Campbell, and he actually was with George Lucas during that time and was highly influential. Where you have that you could basically see Luke's life, Luke, especially in the first Star Wars, and that is the hero's journey of all that getting the mentor from Obi-Wan,
but also knowing the other people, from the Leia and Han Solo and even R2-D2 and the droids and stuff. Just the idea that he's not really alone, and it's recognizing who's with him on this journey, even if it's someone who's kind of bumps up against him in Han Solo. You do kind of need that person who will always call you out, just to make sure that you're following the right path.
And so when you, so I guess I'm kind of digging into like the nuts and bolts of it, but so as you're trying to bring that story out, I mean, you said, is it like getting a lot of content and then you pull out of that content little pieces and create that video? Is that usually the process, or can you sit down and say, hey, here's the 3 things we need to get in these videos to create this story?
Gotcha. Well, typically with videos, and I'll give you just a different example. When we go to shoot, we've done work with a school district here, and it's a grand opening of a school, and they're trying to tell the story and the history behind the name of the mascot and everything. And that's just kind of sitting down and talking with someone, letting the cameras roll. Thank God for digital. I got an hour's worth of footage there, and just talking with them. And then they almost forget that the camera's on, and you keep asking questions, and then you kind of see them starting to loosen up. And then you come back to the question that at first they were not very good at because they were nervous, because all of a sudden there's this red dot there, and
yeah,
and there's a microphone hanging above their head. Just helping break down that barrier, and just laughing with them and joking, and for better or worse, I have a good capability of getting people, once they're on camera, relaxed, and they can let their guard down, because they know that I'm never going to put anything bad out there for them, right? It doesn't do me any good.
Yeah.
There's not, and it's understanding the story that they're trying to tell. And maybe it doesn't fit the box of the hero's journey, but for that video in particular, they're talking about how exciting it is to open up this school in this neighborhood, this beautiful, this gorgeous neighborhood. And then the kids are talking about what they love about the school. And it's not that it's this big, beautiful school. It's that, oh, Miss So-and-so is so sweet. I love the way she does this. I love the way she does that. And it incorporates the community aspect that they were trying to get across, and not just, hey, this is a really neat school.
Okay. And how do you, this is kind of more of a business side question, but how do you generate and reach out to people to be able to do what you do?
Typically it starts with someone coming and saying, I need a website, or I needed business cards. And when we can, we kind of sit down and talk to them, and because, we can do business cards all day, but if the messaging behind it isn't right, we're not really helping you. We're charging you to do something that at the end of the day doesn't benefit your business. And so we try to, and that's where we kind of sit down, and we call it discovery. We sit down and have a discovery session with someone and talk to them about what their goals are, what they're trying to do. And especially on our website's easier, right? Like a lot of times it's taken something that looks like 1990s and updating it for 2018, mobile friendly and all that fun stuff. But then they kind of talk about the things they didn't like. We didn't like the way it didn't show what we really do. It doesn't show how we are so helpful around kids, how we do all this for graduates and things like that. And so, okay, write that down, turn around and make sure that that's at the forefront of the new website when we do it, so that that way their story is being told.
And as you've gone through this, and I guess maybe back us up a little bit now. We said we're going to go back in time a little bit. How did you come to where you're at? How did you acquire these skills and these talents to be able to do the wide variety of things?
Sure. So in college, I went to Sam Houston State University, and I went for what I was told was a radio, television, film degree. And so I went there, took a couple of classes, the basics, and I said, okay, when do I get to take the film class? Because I want to tell stories. I want to make movies. And they said, oh, we don't have a film program. There's 2 classes you can take, but you don't get a film degree. I said, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of what I'm trying to do. And so I transferred to the University of North Texas. And I was living with some friends of my parents. And he called me one day and he said, do you want a job? I said, well, sure, I need money. and I started working for the city of Denton, and I did city council meetings, planning and zoning meetings, and work sessions. And they're not the funnest thing to do, but then I was able to transition into doing other video production there with the people. And I just really loved doing that. That's probably the best. It's frustrating. Every job's frustrating. Every job kind of, you want to tear your hair out, but that was probably the best because there was a level of friendly competitiveness. Like I'd see something that someone would do and I'd go, oh man, how'd they do that? And he'd show me, and I'd try and take it just a little bit further than he did. And then someone else would see something. And so that competitiveness, we all really increased our capabilities in a very short period beyond what we thought would have been possible.
And that's a primary video capture?
That was primary video. And then I transitioned into a public relations specialist. And so in municipal government, there's a position called a public information officer. And that's the spokesperson for the city or a school district or whatever that is. And so I worked for him. And so when he was gone on vacation or he was traveling to Austin, that was my role. And so I transitioned from doing just video to writing press releases, being a spokesperson for the city when needed. And that was back when pagers were still a thing. And so I remember he'd be gone or he'd want a weekend off and he'd go, here you go. And I'd get to carry the pager for the weekend. And if it went off, didn't matter when, I was answering it and trying to handle whatever it was. And that period was a really good period for just not flexing my muscles like I was doing everything perfectly, but flexing my muscles like trying to learn and do better and grow. And that got me into my love of storytelling. And if you can tell a compelling story about why the city needs $100 million for a capital improvement project, you're kind of succeeding in marketing, because that they're not necessarily, they have to be very dry. In fact, you can't really do that. You have to kind of say, here's where the money goes if it were to pass. You can't even really say vote yes or vote no. It's a very interesting way of doing things. So
that's funny. So I'll come up with kind of the basic question. So why, in your work you've seen and the things you've done, why are stories important at all? Why not just do it a different way?
I think at the end of the day, the way we as humans relate to one another is through stories. And I know that when I was in high school or college and just sitting down, you'd have these long conversations where people would tell stories about nothing, like, their day of school, but it was the most compelling thing because you cared about the person, you cared about the people that were involved in the story. And that to me is what storytelling is. It's making people care about something. And then when they do care about it, just kind of keeping them going, keeping them moving forward. And it just all boils down to everybody to me has a story to tell. Everybody. Doesn't matter who you are. There's some interesting aspect about your life. And a lot of people will say, no, that's not true. I'm just a whatever. I'm just a clerk at a store. Yeah, but you get some crazy people coming into your store, don't you?
Yeah. No, there is. There's always a story there. Reminded, as you're saying that, it's kind of a similar idea that there's always there's probably no one that you meet that doesn't have something to teach you, that they don't know something that you don't know, or have experienced something that would be beneficial to you. And that's a little bit humbling if you think about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's incredibly humbling to know that you can learn from anyone. And as a Christian, one of the things that I've heard people say is, you might be the only Bible someone ever reads. And to me, that's a humbling thing to kind of think about. Okay, you need to behave in the right way. You need to act how you're supposed to act, because a lot of people are not going to do something like that, like ever open up a Bible. But if they know who you are and they know what you stand for, hopefully you reflect well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Very much does. I guess sometimes I tap into, for other entrepreneurs out there, other people trying to create their own thing, for someone that's like yourself that's been doing that, what advice would you give to that person?
I would say the best advice is don't stop. So in 2008, whenever the recession was, I'd gotten laid off from a marketing job from a startup, and people were so busy trying to keep their business afloat that they didn't care about marketing their business, which
that makes sense, right?
Yeah, and so that was a tough time. And I transitioned into doing construction. I was still doing marketing and stuff, but you do what you got to do when you have a wife and a kid to pay the bills. And I just look back, the people I know that are where I wish I was today never gave up. And so I know that I constantly live with this idea that I'm 10 years behind where I should be, which is ludicrous. It makes no sense, because no one is anywhere without any number of things happening, but I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, as much as I might not think it. So yeah, persistence wins.
And I guess where do you see your business and stuff going from here, and say 3 years, 5 years from now? Where would you like to see it?
Sure. Well, we're looking at doing a couple things. One of the things we'd want to do is open up some type of place where people can grow their business, basically some type of business incubator, because we want to be able to help them and give them a place that they can grow, run full speed into brick walls, and get up and try again, and have that community around them to say, no, come on, let's go again, try harder, try something different, try this or that. And we'd also like to transition into, I don't want to say a media company, but something where we have people to do more podcasts and do books and do short films. Like, I have equipment, and if I'm not using it, it's literally sitting on the shelf. So however we can to help people and have those resources, I'd love to be able to. I've made 2 feature films. They're a little they're a little rough, and so I still kind of hold out hope that one day I can make something that I'm really proud of, and that everyone is really proud of that works on it. So
is that still one of your kind of things out there? You said making film was one of where you started.
Yep. I made some short films. I've made a couple of feature films, both in this area. Actually shot one in, I'm blanking out, Lamarck. And then shot one here in Alvin, and it, for better or worse, it didn't come out like I wanted them to. And I just still look at it and go, I have a story to tell. I'm waiting. I'm kind of biding my time to try and get some things to fall into place. But
well, if people want to get a hold of you and connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
Sure. We have a Facebook page. Battle Cry Revival is the website. The Facebook page is, oh my goodness, facebook.com/Battle Cry Revival. We're on Instagram as well, Battle Cry Revival. Pretty much everywhere except for Twitter, because they have a length on their usernames, and so we're Battle Cry Rev. But we love to talk to people. Instagram and Facebook is kind of where we're most active, and then on the website, we love talking to people. Obviously, we do a podcast called Break the Box, where people can kind of see how other people got out of the box that was holding them back, and so we
cool.
try to we go to a lot of events. We just try to reach out to as many people as we can.
Okay. Well, Jake, this has been fun. Is there anything you want to, that we may have missed, you want to make sure you get out there, or a piece of advice or part of your story that you want to leave us with?
No, I just thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And for anyone that's listening that's even considering doing something creative with their life, I would tell them to again, just keep going. And we need more creativity in this world.
Yeah.
So.
And good stories.
Yes, absolutely. More good stories.
All right, Jake. Well, thank you for being with us here on StoryHinge.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Thank you again, Jake, for being here on StoryHinge. A few notes in closing. If you want to reach out to Jake Starkey and his company, you can do so at battlecryrevival.com. battlecryrevival.com. All right, just closing up here. Hope everyone's having a great week out there. I think there's so much left on the table, if you will, in terms of storytelling within business. And I'm glad people out there like Jake are helping companies, helping individual entrepreneurs be able to take what's happened to them and be able to put that in a more purposeful story. And I think it can be used in multiple ways in reaching out to customers. If you can integrate the customer story into the company story and be able to weave that together, I think that's a pretty powerful way for a customer to feel connected to your company. I think there's from my experience, I think there's a lot of companies that also could use more storytelling within the company to really create that culture, to create that common bond from top to bottom, is being able to share a common story. I mean, that's really very human. That's how. I mean, I guess sometimes tribal gets a negative connotation, especially in today, but we are tribal in that way. And if we share a common tribe story, we feel united with those around us. And so I guess I encourage you out there, this one's really for business owners, is if you have looking for ways to improve culture, to bring your team together, see if you can't craft some stories around that really communicate the values, communicate the vision and the goals where you're going, and see if that can help you. And we're going to be bringing you more along this line in terms of bringing story into business. And we've had different guests over the past have brought some of this out, and my hope is to bring this more to a more tangible level for you individually out there. If you're finding value in this podcast, subscribe, share. And another little pitch for those who want to learn about the 73 most influential people who ever lived, check out 73 Mentors. And that's no space, the number 7 and 3, and Mentors podcast. And you'll hear me and my brother going through the 73 most influential people. So far, we've tackled at number 22, Plato, and we're currently in number 21. We're going to be counting down all the way to the top one, and then we're going to be mixing it up after that. But we're talking about Galileo right now. All right, guys, like I said, have a great week. We will catch you in a few.
Thank you for sharing with us at StoryHinge. We hope this time together has added more goodness to your journey. Until next time, onward and upward, and may your own story continue to grow more beautiful.